Once again, this is Otherworldly Fundraising. Our fundraising efforts are benefiting one simple wish. Links are located in the description below. Please welcome our moderator for the next panel. Please welcome Dan Johnson. Dan, welcome in. And now these are the magic words you've all been waiting for. The stage is yours. Take it away.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you are on social media right now, if you're on Facebook, you're on Instagram, share the link because we want to get as many people to join us for our upcoming interview. And also, we want to get as many people as we can supporting the One Simple Wish charity. But definitely, you want to tune in for the interview we've got coming up right now. It is my honor to welcome to our convention Mr. Rob Edwards.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Rob, it's a pleasure. First of all, with Rob, I'm very excited to talk to him. As a writer myself, I always love talking to other writers and looking over your credits. You have done some extensive work. I was going to say, why don't you tell the folks at home, the folks who are watching, a little bit about yourself and some of the things that they may have seen that you've written.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see. I started off a million years ago. I wrote In Living Color, Fresh Prince. Let's see. Wow. Fresh Prince, Full House, Rock, Parenthood. Jeez, I did like a zillion. I think I have about 300 hours of TV under my belt. And then after that, I kind of got not tired, but I thought that there might be something other than writing for people sitting on a couch telling jokes. So I ventured into movies. I've always been an animation geek, so I found out that there was an opportunity to write the space version of Treasure Island, and so jumped into that. Stayed up all night watching all the versions of Treasure Island, reading the book, and all that stuff in time for a 10 o'clock a.m. meeting the next day. So they tell me at 6 p.m. They send me a script, so I can't Xerox it, and then I meet with them at 10. So I didn't sleep that night. Wound up getting the gig, which was great, and then just from there, I've had just a ton of fun in features. I've also worked on Hours. I worked on Studio 60 with Aaron Sorkin, and then I got to write the Princess and the Frog with the same directors that directed Treasure Planet. So that was a ball. That got nominated. Well, actually, that and Treasure Planet got nominated for Academy Awards, and then that one also got nominated for a Golden Globe. So that was cool. And right now, I'm working on a project called Defiant, the story of Captain Robert Smalls. So yeah, I've had a really good time.
Awesome. Well, I was going to ask, what got you into writing? What was it that made you want to become a writer in the first place?
Believe it or not, I was a shy kid. I was. Oh, there you go. Yeah. And I always find that there's two things in common with a lot of writer friends of mine. They were shy, and their fathers were doctors for some reason. Fathers were professionals, and in some way or another, they wanted to kind of squirrel away and get into something else. So I would say I was not the class clown. I was a kid in the back of the room making fun of the class clown.
Yeah.
And that just kind of evolved into a love of literature and theater, and then my dad had a Super 8 camera. That shows you how old I am. Had a Super 8 camera, and I would borrow that on weekends and shoot stuff with my friends. Star Wars came out, and that was seismic. So I did my version of Star Wars, just blowing up models in my garage, and saving the world every weekend. And just that was my love of it, and that just kind of grew. I just thought, wow, it'd be really great to be good at this. A friend of mine recommended that I just read biographies, and so I did that. And from those, everybody's biographies. It was Neil Simon, Woody Allen. My heroes in writing. Isaac Asimov and whatever. But a lot of the guys who were the giants of comedy, they'd all started as stand-up comics. They had all written for Variety. They had all worked into sitcoms, and then they started writing movies and then directing movies. And that was all of those guys. That was, everybody from Woody Allen on down. And so I just went through those steps. I did stand up for a while. I did sitcoms, obviously, for a long time. I did warm up while I was doing sitcoms, and then moved through it and just, took my licks. I mean, I wasn't great at everything, but you go, you take your licks, you get better, bigger, better, faster, stronger. And it's just wound up being a ton of fun. And I'm glad I'm not a doctor. I think the world can be glad that Rob Edwards has not become a doctor. So yeah.
Well, we need more doctors with a sense of humor. So that would be.
Well, there you go. Well, laughter cures. Laughter cures a million things.
Well, I was going to mention a guest. Having been a shy kid, I take it that comedy was your way of breaking out of your shell.
Comedy was my way of breaking out of my shell, and also, making friends, and also staying out of fights. That couldn't throw a punch, but I could really, really make fun of somebody in a way that would make them walk away. So that was that's always a good thing growing up. So I recommend it highly for everyone. Get funny and then and stay out of trouble.
Well, nobody wants to mess with the funny guy. It's like if you make people laugh, you're going to be golden. So
yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, I'm wearing, if Rob sees my shirt, I'm gonna, he's gonna do 20 minutes on me, so I better avoid him. So that's always a good thing.
Well, now you said you started out doing stand-up comedy. Were there any particular comedians that you were inspired by?
Yes,
growing up.
Many. I study everybody. I like everybody. I even like what is it? There's this Uncle Roger right now on YouTube. So I will study everybody all the way through. I've worked a lot with Chris Rock, and what I find with those guys, he and the writers that work with him, is that they're all comedy historians, and I think there's something really interesting, wonderful in that you really need to kind of study everything. When I was at Disney Pixar, those guys, it's been described not even by me as film school on steroids, where everybody studies everything all the time. And so for me, I liked, Richard Pryor, Lenny Bruce, even some of the guys, Sam Kinison and those guys, everybody for what they were doing, because everybody had a different voice. And I didn't want to be a stand-up per se. I wanted to be a writer. So I really liked, that guy is funny because he speaks in those rhythms, and his jokes are constructed this way. And this guy is funny because of the angle that he pursues comedy with. And so, so I very much, I will study everybody all the time, even people I don't like, because I want to see, why do people like them?
Yeah.
It's good. It's always good to geek out on comedy. I mean, there's worse things to do with your time than to watch fantastic comedy specials.
Well, it's kind of wonderful. It's fascinating also when you've got comedians today that have been inspired by comedians came before them, and then realized those comedians were inspired by the previous generation and the previous generation. And it's just kind of wonderful to think that humor has been formed over the course of almost 100 years, going all the way back to like vaudeville and burlesque. And it's just really kind of wonderful to think that something that might have been found funny in 1923 is still going to be found humorous in 2023. You may have to tweak it a little bit for the culture, but
that was a fun debate, because I worked on the pilot for Martin, Martin Lawrence's sitcom, and we were talking about his Shanae character, where he gets in a dress. And we were saying, that's really innovative. He's going to be playing a man and a woman and whatever. And I said, well, geez, has anybody seen Flip Wilson? Has anybody seen Milton Berle?
Yeah.
Has anybody seen, through the history of comedy, this has always been men in dresses, 100%, but there is a long, wonderful history about it. And you have to kind of look at it. Flip Wilson was amazing as Geraldine. Milton Berle was just doing it for camp. But as you go back through history, there's a lot of really great examples of that. And you always kind of build your cathedral on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah.
By the way, I see there's this question about a cinema therapy episode of on Treasure Planet. Somebody was asking if I'd seen it. I have not. I didn't know that it existed. I'm going to watch it right after this because I truly love watching reaction YouTube videos of the movies that I've made. They're really it's one of the best feelings you ever get writing stuff that, especially for public consumption. I like to sit in the front of the movie theater, especially with with both Treasure Planet and Princess and the Frog. I sit in the front row and then I look back. I look back and I watch the audience, and especially Princess and the Frog. There's this, there's that moment when everybody bursts into tears, and it's interesting to watch how it evolves, where people will just get very quiet, and then you'll see heads go on shoulders, and then there's like arms and padding, and then the sniffles start, and then it's tissues, and it's interesting because if you look at a room of 500 people, it's like, oh, this is great. Everybody is having the same kind of cathartic experience in the same way. But no, I'd love to watch the cinema therapy episode of Treasure Planet. That'd be awesome.
Cinema therapy, I've seen some of the videos that the guy does. As I recall it correctly, it's a clinical psychologist who actually will break down the emotional reactions that people have to films. And yeah, you'll get a kick. I want to check it out myself. The videos I've seen this guy has done has been fantastic. So.
Oh, excellent. Okay, good. Excellent.
Now,
well, follow up with me. I'll tell you. Find me on Insta. I'll tell you what I think about it. Or actually, I'll post something about it. Yeah.
Well, I'll trade you my information with Christian. She can get in touch. So, like I said, I'd love to talk more. Like I said, I'm definitely Defiant. I definitely want to talk to you more about that.
Absolutely.
Being a comics writer. But first, I got to ask. You mentioned in Living Color. What were some of the sketches that you did on Living Color? And were there any characters that you had a hand in creating for that show?
Oh wow. Well, in Living Color was funny because I think I was one of the first writers hired to do it. That Keenan Wayans just kind of had this idea, hey, I want to do a Black Saturday Night Live. And, I believe because the doors had been closed to him for so long on Saturday Night Live. Yeah. And he and Damon and they just kind of wanted to, they had all these ideas they wanted to do. And so we sat down, like, what can you do this? At the time, I think I was working on like Different World or something very sitcom conventionally. And my agents were, when I said I was interested in doing it, my agent said, absolutely not. Do not, don't go to Variety after you've done sitcom. That's it. People do it the other way. I said, no, this sounds exciting. It sounds like something, the reason why I got into the entertainment industry is to do stuff like this. It kind of breaks doors down. And so we got right to work. There were some fantastic writers on the thing. And I'll tell two stories and I'll tell one story. I'll answer your question. The one thing that I found was interesting about it, which will lead to our conversation about Defiant, is that the executives, largely white, on the show didn't get the show that we were doing. It was supposed to be an hour series, and then they cut it to a half-hour series, and then they cut it to an hour special, and then they cut it to a half-hour special. They kept every day that they would come in and watch the run-throughs, they'd say, like, nope, we're saving our money. We're going to cut this back. Oh, man. And I kept asking them, well, why were they doing this? Because I was like, I was at the time, the guy with with sitcom street cred. And they said, well, it's just not funny. I said, well, you and I are watching this different shows because this show is hilarious. Yeah. And they said, no, it's not. No, come on, Rob, stop it. And they come to the taping. And at the taping, I don't know if you've ever seen like a black audience at a sitcom, but it was like a church experience where people were stomping their feet and high-fiving and whooping, not laughing, but just whatever, yelling at the thing. People were literally running up and down the aisles, high-fiving people when the jokes would come around. And the executives turned to me and they said, like, oh, did you pay those guys to do that? I was like, you can't pay people to do this. This show is cathartic. we've been waiting a long time for a show like this. So this is it. My and the sketch that did it was Wrath of Farrakhan.
Yes. Oh, I love that one. That is so cool.
Yeah, because nobody was touching Louis Farrakhan. It was just like, and that was it. Keaton said all of the third rails. We're just licking all the third rails. So we're doing, Arsenio, we're doing Mike Tyson, we're doing everybody. And so that was it. Like the Mike Tyson and Robin Givens on with Love Connection. I had a part in that. I wrote a sketch that we didn't do because I think we thought it was too inside for the audience, which was the 1934 Image Awards.
Yeah.
and I'd written that because it was at the time it was like Step and Fetch It and Mantan Moreland and Hattie McDaniel. And I just wanted to show like just how far we'd come from those very stereotypical performances, and that if there was an Image Awards at that time, they would have had to have given them to those particular performers. And that wound up becoming This Moment in Black History, and that was sustained. That continued on, and I forget what the other. I had one other big sketch that kind of wound up enduring through that. I only stayed on for the pilot, but I have credit on 9 episodes because once they had cut down the amount of stuff that we were going to do on the show, Keenan said, we're going to shoot an hour and a half of material, whether or not they say half hour or not. We're just going to shoot. We have a bunch of great stuff. There's no need to throw it away. Let's just go. So we shot 90 minutes of material, and that got cannibalized over 9 shows. So I get credit for 9 shows. I was just there for the 3 weeks of the pilot.
Well, I was going to say, the executives obviously had no clue what they were talking about, because you cannot fake laughter. I mean, I've seen people who fake laughter, and you can tell when somebody's faking it, and when you really, it's a real belly laugh when people are really reacting.
Exactly. Yeah, that horror and comedy are, kind of share a space.
Exactly.
And really, as a movie writer, you want to try to find those moments that are just cathartic and fulfilling and whatever. I'm always talking about, there is no, I think in decades, I'd never seen a bigger movie moment than when Steve Rogers, when Captain America catches Mjolnir, the hammer, Thor's hammer.
Endgame,
in Endgame. And friends of mine had gone out of their way. I tried to see it the first weekend, and friends of mine had gone out of their way to say, like, I'm not going to say a word about it, just talk about, just see it, and then we're going to have coffee on Monday. And when that moment happens, there's this wave of energy through the audience. Now it's just pictures. It's just, there's a light bulb and some, some celluloid and some things, and the magnetic things and whatever are creating sound around the room. And this magical moment happens, and everybody is just, oh my God, it's happening. Wow. And you can't hear anything for like 3 minutes after that moment. And everybody is just kind of looking like, oh, hey, did you experience that too? That's what makes movies great. And so if you're writing comedy, that feeling, that anticipation of this is really funny. I'm now just sitting in my office laughing, but I have a feeling that maybe a couple hundred people in the theater might enjoy this joke the same way as I do, or this is really scary, or I think this moment, like, when Ray dies in Princess and the Frog, when I wrote it, I was just crying my eyes out. I'm in my office, and there were 2 scenes. One is when she says, Evangeline is just a star, Ray, whatever, just a ball of hot air. And she walks away, and he says, oh, she's just speaking out of a broken heart. He immediately forgives her, and he's just wonderful. And then and then the scene where he dies. And I would leave my office open at Disney, my door to my office open. And I'm sitting in my office, and I'm just bawling my eyes out. And people would walk by, and they go, Rob, are you okay? I'm like, just wait. I'm going to publish these pages in a couple of minutes. And you'll see what I'm going through. And sure enough, one by one, the story crew would walk by my office, eyes in tears, going, "Rob, this is beautiful. I can't wait to, whatever. Let's hope that none of us screw this up, because there's a chain." And then you wait like 2 years, for people to actually experience it. But yeah, there's nothing like writing comedy, horror, really great emotional moments. It's why we do what we do.
Well, I was going to say, we have a question, and that is, what advice do you have for aspiring writers?
Yes. Writing is one of those things you can't. The meanest thing I say to people will say like, yeah, I'll answer it this way. One, there should not be any such thing as an aspiring writer. You're a writer. It's click. You're either a writer who is writing, you're struggling, or you're not writing and you're thinking about writing. In which case, I always say, and that's the main thing I always say, is that, okay, good. If you're an aspiring writer, I'm an aspiring NFL quarterback. I sit in my room and I watch a lot of stuff, and I know a lot about where the ball should go and all that kind of stuff. I've never put on cleats and I've never gotten on a field. And it's only when you do that, you can't read about baseball. You can't read about, race car driving. You have to get in a car or on a field or anything like that. You really have to sit down and write wrong. You're going to write wrong. There's this great book, Bird by Bird. And the first chapter is S-word first drafts. That we all write those really, really, really horrible first drafts. I have them all over this office, and the key is you don't let anybody see that. Right. A lot of people will write it and they'll say, "Oh, I'm not a good writer. I'm just going to stop," and that to me is silly. You write and then you write and then you write again. You show people that will beat you up. Yes. Who you respect. Whose opinion you respect. Show your mom, whatever. I used to show my brother, who had like zero attention span, and he would just put my stuff. He'd read two lines and he'd throw it away, and he'd just toss it on his bed and promise me that he would read it later, and he never would. And so that was my challenge. I want my brother to read one page of my short story, and then I just started studying. Like, well, okay. The first words in Hamlet are "Halt, who goes there?" What a great first line. You come most quickly upon your hour, Horatio. It's like, well, is the ghost here yet? What ghost? Are you kidding me? What? You're in that thing. You're going. And so once I read that, I said, okay, good enough for Shakespeare, good enough for me. And so exactly. I planted stuff very early on in my short stories that would get my brother to read until the third page, and by then I would have other things in there. And now I write like that all the time. You can see that at the beginning of Princess and the Frog, there's all kinds of Easter eggs, just laying there, just little things, depth charges waiting to go off, and that's just from learning how to write. So no such thing as an aspiring writer. Just sit down and write, especially in this world where you can make a YouTube video today about anything. You can self-publish pretty much everywhere if literary, if you're literary. That there's nothing stopping you from anything. Right. The cruel reality of writing is that you do most of it for free. I always say I get paid to take notes, but that writers wake up at 4 a.m. thinking, oh crap, there's so many pages I haven't written yet. That you're just driven to, you watch an old lady, walking with a young boy down the street, and there's a little, a Boy Scout or something, and you say like, oh, that looks like a cool story. Oh, I wonder if that lady, I wonder if she turned into a vampire and ate oh, great. And and you see those things all over the place, and my greatest fear is that I'll die before I get all my ideas out. Exactly. Not that I'm waiting for the first thing that I write to be perfect. It's like, no, there's things that I was lauded for early in my career that I look back on and just like, oh my God. You know? So yeah.
Well, bear in mind, as a writer, you're always going to be your worst critic. I mean, that's the thing.
Absolutely.
But also,
my voice is in my head. My voice is in my head all the time, and I think that's why. I think that's common with all writers, that you sit there and you just like, shut up. I just want to get this first draft, first draft done. And you're like, Angel, talk to me. And then you go, and then you invite that devil back onto your shoulder, and you say, and you grab your red pen and, and you just go and strike all that stuff out.
Yeah. I have to ask, you're talking about voices in your head. As a writer, have you ever found yourself having a conversation with your characters where you're talking to your characters are talking to you, or they're talking to each other, and you realize it's all you doing it? It's almost like a ventriloquist act.
100%. 100%. I mean, that was an interesting thing about working with Aaron Sorkin, because his characters are all basically him. That he's very glib and very smart and very he does tend to speak with a rhythm that is almost musical. And when he gets going, yes, he is both sides of the argument always. He's never like there's one character and a straw man. No, both characters are very smart and very, strategic and knowledgeable about what they're doing. I tend to look at different aspects of myself as the different characters. I'm a hardworking guy, so I really do identify with Tiana. I always say I will not be out hustled. And so Tiana and I have a relationship. And then I'm like this, Dr. Son who drove sports cars all the time and whatever, and, went to private school in Syracuse and stuff. And so I really identified with that notion of the prince and that part of it. And so I would, more often than not, I would either write my courtship with my wife, or I would write arguments with myself, back and forth between the two of them. What's the most clever thing Tiana can say? Okay, great. What's the most, Naveen thing that Naveen can say? Because he's not trying to out clever. He's just charming. So how can I make those conversations more interesting? And the level to which they're not interesting is the level to which I'm not interesting, right? So that's part of my job as a writer also, is to do interesting things, get experience in all kinds of different aspects of life, really drive myself to learn as much as I can about everything. When I started that project, immediately I said, I weirdly, guys, I'd like to become an expert on green tree frogs, because both Tiana and Naveen spend most of the movie as green tree frogs. And they said, because it's Disney Pixar, they were like, yeah, we're way ahead of you. We've got books, we've got an expert that you can talk to right away. If you look at Finding Nemo, there's all kinds of stuff about, that lets you know just how much they studied about marine life and the specific marine life of Australia and all of that, because you want the world to be real. And so, yeah, all of that stuff, it becomes part of you. And I always find that there should be a little bit of my DNA in every single one of my characters. And the thing I'll say too to students is love your characters. I see a lot of people who write characters that are, they're evil, or they're, whatever, they're dumb or something like that. And I'm like, no, it never works that way. You have to have an affection for the characters that you're writing. And it helps if you yourself identify personally with those characters.
I've always heard your characters are your babies or your children.
Yes.
And even when a child goes wrong, if a child has done something so terrible that society labels him a monster, as the parent, you're still going to say, that's my child, I love him, or I love her.
Yes.
And I think that's the way it is with creating villains and creating bad guys. It's the worst villains are always the one where they're twirling the mustache and there's no redeeming value, or you can't see the human side of them. But if you can find a villain and say, you know what? He's a monster. He's got to be stopped. But on a level, I kind of get what he's talking about.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing. Like Facilier as a bad guy it's very easy to look at him and go, "Ooh, he's literally twirl his mustache," and then and we committed very early on, we are not going to have him twirl a mustache at all. And it was the late '90s when we were doing it, and we thought, things were going on with the market. There were all these guys who were over leveraged. There was the the bailout, and I said maybe he's just over leveraged. That maybe he's just a guy who wants money. He wants money because he wants Big Daddy's money. He has a plan to get it, and then it fails, and so his recourse is to double down with the friends on the other side. To go to them and ask them essentially for a loan. For him to finish it, and as he does, he can't lose. And so he can be as nice a guy in the world as you want, but he cannot lose this thing because he's going to get pulled into the underworld. Yeah. And once you look at him that way, you say, okay, good, I get this guy, because there's so many people who were exactly like him, just in a different way. Like there was this time with Bond villains where they worked really hard to humanize them, and that I liked a lot. That idea of, Thanos is trying to do the world a favor, and that you have to look at it from that perspective. Give your bad guys are people too. In their world, they're good guys, and the good guy's a bad guy. So yeah.
I always point out to Magneto from the X-Men movies, Ian McKellen, when you realize he's a Holocaust survivor and you realize what's happened before.
He's a tragic figure. Yeah.
Again, what he wants to do is evil, but on a human level, you understand exactly why he's doing this. He's seen what happens when madmen start letting their prejudices run wild and start looking for scapegoats. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's the thing. And then when you find that, because the other part is easy. Oh, he's evil. He wants to stop the good guy from doing the thing, or he wants the same thing as a good guy. Those the antagonist rules. But when you find something, when you find an antagonistic motivation that could easily flip the movie, if you wanted to tell it from the other point of view, then it's just delicious. Then you're writing. You're writing. You're saying something about the world. I was just watching this movie, Sisu. I don't know if nobody else has seen this thing, but it's the greatest movie for a long, long time, beside RRR. Anyway, but Sisu is this movie about this German guy who finds a bunch of gold, and the Nazis are trying to stop him, and it's basically John Wick from then on in. Nice. But the motivation for the bad guy is he's a Nazi, and they say, well, we should just walk away. Let's just give up on this thing. And he says, after the war is over, all of the soldiers will just be discarded on the streets like we were nothing. The only thing that will prevent that from happening is gold. Some of us will have profiteered, and some of us will just be on the streets like average, people without homes, without any purpose in life. And so I need that gold. And at that point, it's the what Michael Arndt calls the antagonist's aria. But it's a beautiful way to look at the movie, because immediately it reverses, and you think about Vietnam and then what happened to the soldiers after that, and just how we treat soldiers in general, and the movie takes on this new depth in it. So yeah, that is wonderful. Oh, and I do want to say, for those aspiring writers, I would take advantage of Michael Arndt, who wrote Toy Story 3 and also Little Miss Sunshine, has a bunch of videos on his website where he talks about what he learned at Disney Pixar. And I point everybody to those things because they're just brilliant. He had some animators animated for you, so it's not all dry and dusty, but it is it really opens up. He thinks like me. He's super analytical. So it really explains how to put together a movie in a way that nobody has done before.
So I'll check those out. I'll check out that movie also. It's, what's the name of that again?
Sisu, Sisu. It's so interesting. If you like John Wick, if you like, some of those, just straight up cat and mouse action movies. It's really good, and I believe it was done by the guys who did John Wick for about $6 million. And for once again, aspiring writers, directors, actors, you make a movie for $6 million that works in an action category. Whoever did that movie, their next movie is going to go through the roof.
Did this have a female lead in it? It was like really badass.
Oh, there was one. What was it called? You're Next. That was a really good.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah, and that one was super clever. They did it in one room. It couldn't have cost more than $15 to make. It was like Saw. It all takes place in one room, and it's just a very clever telling of a movie, and off you go. I'll also say, as we're talking about great movies, great first movies that people, aspirational people should check out. Chris Nolan made a movie called Becoming. It's black and white. It's about an hour long. It's supposed to be a movie, but it only clocked out at about an hour. But it's so clever, so well written. It's just two guys, more or less sitting in cafes and whatever. One guy's a bank robber. One guy wants to be a bank robber, witnesses a robbery, and then wants to be like him and stuff. But it's just so clever along the way that you see everything that Chris Nolan does that's great. His handling of characters, his handling of suspense, his sense of irony, his twisty storytelling. All of that stuff was in this movie that I think he made just on pocket change over a year. People's hair changed during from scene to scene because he was just grabbing the actors when he could. But a brilliant way to make a debut. I see a lot of writers. I teach at USC, and I have a lot of students who will write these epic $200-300 million movies as their first movie, and I'll tell them nobody's going to make that movie. It could be really, really, really creative, but nobody's going to spin the wheel on a 21-year-old first time writer for $300 million. If it doesn't work, that executive never works again. If it does work, it's a freak, it's a fluke, whatever. And who knows what the next thing you do will be. So, and worst case scenario, that movie will be taken away from you and given to a bigger writer very quickly. So beware those kind of traps, Hollywood traps.
I've always heard the best advice you can give a writer that's doing a script is write it like you're spending your own money.
Yes.
Write it as inexpensive as you can, because when you start thinking that way, you start thinking in terms of, we could have the big sky beam coming down. It's going to blow up the whole city. Or we could have a scene where it's really intense scene between a husband and wife where the husband is going to sacrifice himself.
Yeah, exactly.
And like I said, it sounds, it's not trying to be flippant, but sometimes the right word, the right emotion, the right scene that's written can be worth more than any special effects in the world. Right.
Well, it's interesting because in Defiant, my graphic novel, there is a scene. There's a in Robert Smalls's life when he was about 10 years old, because he was raised by his white slave owner, essentially as a rich white boy. So and I believe that's my theory is that's why he felt him, always felt the constrictions of being a slave and really wanted to kind of gain his freedom. And he gained his freedom by essentially commandeering a Confederate ship and surrendering it to the Union Army, becoming a war hero and going on to all kinds of things. But there is a something that happened to him when he was young, when he was a kid, and that was that his mom had to take him and basically teach him how to be a slave. And so she, because he was acting out, he was getting arrested at night for hanging out with white kids and all kinds of stuff. And so she takes him to a slave auction, and then she has him work on a plantation. And so when we were doing the slave auction thing, I said, the last thing I want to do in this project, I said, I'm a Disney guy. I'm the guy who wrote Princess and the Frog, and I'm writing a slave thing. I don't want to see whips. I don't want to see blood. I want to see anything like that. I want this to be a movie the family can watch and enjoy and get inspired by this guy. But part of his origin story is this thing. Yeah. So I said, well, what if we just look at, and this is the comic book. What if we just show the kid seeing the things that are happening? Yeah. Maybe see the shadows on the wall behind him of what's happening, but see the horror on the kid's face, because I think that that's more important in the moment than what is happening, than the slave auction or the kid being separated from his mom or any of that stuff. The more important thing is, how is Robert reacting to that moment? How does a 10-year-old react to seeing a mother pulled from his child's thing, or seeing a grown man get whipped, or seeing somebody get auctioned off, and taken away, or a family split up, any of these things. The biggest thing is the eyes. And, I think that's, when storytelling solves a problem, when you can artfully solve a problem in your story, I think that's also like a gem. I mean, that's what, once again, the writer's toolbox, the writer's craft. I think that's what it's all about.
Well, I was going to ask, well, actually, we have a question first, but I'll come back to what I was going to ask was, yes. As a writer, how do you avoid the rabbit hole of what I just came up with must have been done by someone else by now? Should I produce or give up on it?
Yes. Proceed. That there are, I don't know if you remember, there was this time when there were like 3 movies about asteroids about to hit the world. And
I remember that year.
Yeah, exactly. It was crazy, but really there was only one that stood out. There was only one good one. And there's a million switcheroo movies, and then there's Parent Trap and Big. That of them, and I'd say that there were, I don't know how many. I'd say close to at least half a dozen, 8 of these switcheroo movies, where a kid becomes a parent, whatever. And then there's, just there are 2 that stand out that you really think about. And Big was the last of them. Penny Marshall just really figured it out. It's well written, it's artful. Tom Hanks was brilliant in it, and it said all the things that you usually say with a switcheroo movie. So I think that there's always that thing of like, there are only so many ideas out in the universe, right. And that you're gonna do them. The key as a writer, if you play basketball, there's probably somebody who's shot from the exact same place that you were shooting in the exact same way and put the ball in the hole. Somehow the way that you do it and the timing that you do it and the circumstances make it better, or worse. So you can't really go on that. The key is to what a lot of people do, and this is a secret sauce, which I'm glad this person asked me. The secret sauce of it is to know the other iterations of the thing that has been done before. That there's a million romantic comedies in the world. There's one Princess and the Frog, and frankly, Princess and the Frog, if you watch It Happened One Night and Princess and the Frog side by side, you're going to find out a lot about how Rob Edwards wrote The Princess and the Frog. If you watch Royal Holiday, and watch Princess and the Frog, you're going to see a lot. That there's I learned a lot from those movies, and I stood on the shoulders of giants and made my movie better. I didn't ignore them because they were not ignorable. It was, It Happened One Night won 9 Academy Awards. It's the greatest romantic comedy ever made. So why wouldn't I really, really, really study that movie? It's a road picture. Pixar was known for their road pictures, and I wanted to kind of make a new type of romantic comedy. So if you replace Clark Gable and if you replace the two roles, that's basically where I am, where Tiana is Clark Gable. So so off you go. The other, not only knowing how those things work, but also that you are part of the continuum. You're part of movie history. You'll be whatever 7 of 9 to tell a Star Trek reference, but you'll be in there in that line. So make sure that you have built from 6543, and that your innovation is better than anybody else will do, and then the next person is challenged to beat you in what you do. So so don't back away from it. Acknowledge it and beat it. Be better than the previous model. I'm working on something now, and somebody was saying like, oh yeah, that's basically Lone Wolf and Cub, and I said, oh, it's not just a movie, it's a genre. That Mandalorian is Lone Wolf and Cub. And if you really understand Mandalorian, then you're in great shape. If you don't, some of the problems probably with other things in the canon suffer from not really acknowledging that these movies, Kurosawa made some really fantastic movies that we should all be studying, and that is now more easy than any other time in the world to go back and study film history and and build.
Well, I was going to say that's what Favreau was talking about when he did Mandalorian. He said he based it on Lone Wolf and Cub, and in a way, it was a nod to George Lucas looking at the Kurosawa's films and drawing inspiration from those. So
yes, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. I think that it's we would like to think that we are unique snowflakes, and that everything we do is gonna it's gotta, if it comes from the heart and it's super organic and it's really original, then that'll be good. And I don't think that that's the way movies work. I think maybe that's the way art works. But if you look at if you look at people who paint, the way they learn how to paint is they go into galleries and they paint the grandmasters. You go into big museums and there are kids with canvases repainting the grandmasters stroke for stroke to learn how that is. If you're going to learn music, then you start with chopsticks and then you move up and then you play the greatest greatest piano pieces that you can, until you are playing the more complex pieces. And by playing those, you learn how those things are constructed, and then you start composing. John Williams didn't just wake up and go, oh, I'm going to compose. He was a fantastic musician for a long, long time. Randy Newman, fantastic musician for a long, long time. And then they go off and they compose. So the same should apply to writing. And I think we get gummed up because we don't learn how to write by studying writing. We learn how to write by writing, so it becomes a tougher thing to learn. We're composing and learning the craft at the same time. But I think there's a lot to be said for reading screenplays, watching movies, really getting into the DNA of what makes a movie work. Watch it. I always say, watch it 2-3 times, 5 times, 10 times, until the magic of it wears off. And then you say, okay, now let's dissect this thing. Act 1, scene 1. What did they do there that made me so enthralled? Wait, when I cried in Act 3, what was that about? Okay, that's what made me cry. What did they do to make me, what were the essential elements that got me to tears in Act 3? They started in Act 1. And just, go. You see this wall here, this wall here. It's Post-its on a door for those who are listening, and it's the structure this is actually defined. This is the life of Robert Smalls, but most of the time, he's born at the top of the door and he dies on the bottom, and the middle of it is the doorknob is basically he starts running for Congress and stuff. But the most movies for me, I start on that door, and what I want to know is what makes other movies in the genre that I'm working on, what makes them work.
Yeah.
And so I will study. I mean, I watched every single princess movie that there was. I watched all the episodes of all the TV shows about princesses.
Yeah.
And then I got going on, Judd Apatow romantic comedies, classic romantic comedies, everything, because I really wanted all that stuff to be, kind of seeping out of me as I was writing. And then and only then that I sit down and put pen to paper. I regret that many people don't do that. That when they find out that, oh, there was another movie about a mermaid who, whatever, I guess I'll stop writing. It's like, no, there's Splash, there's Little Mermaid, there's dozens of movies about mermaids.
Exactly.
Some are bad and some are good. What made the bad ones bad? What made the good ones good?
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is, even like you said, there's only so many stories that can be told. The thing is, it's finding your own unique spin on it. It's putting what you bring to the table. And plus, too,
I'm a different person than IAL Diamond. So,
right.
If I were to do something like it hot, I'd probably come up with a different spin on it. If I were to do The Apartment, I'm sure I could do a great version of The Apartment. Urban Black, different thing. You wouldn't know it. When we were doing Fresh Prince, we sat down and watched Brady Bunch episodes, because we knew that no matter what we did on Fresh Prince, no one would ever say, "Oh, that's just the Brady Bunch,"
Right.
Because we were making it unique to the show. We were just looking for seeds, little inspirational seeds to take us the rest of the way. But that's, you have to count on the fact that you are whatever aspects of you that make you are worth sharing with an audience.
Well, I think too, regardless of what you put on the page, if it's real, if it's engaging, I always think a really good story is going to cross all barriers. It isn't going to be based on what color you are, where you come from, your nationality.
Yep.
A really good story is going to resonate with you because on a human level, we all have the same emotions. We all have the same we don't have shared experiences, but we can relate and have empathy towards one another.
Absolutely.
And it's like we laugh at the same things, we're crying at the same things.
I think so. I think there is Lenny Bruce used to say, we're all the same schmuck.
Yeah.
and that the things that you think are, wow, that could have only happened to me. There's probably, a good couple, hopefully million people out there who the same thing has happened to, especially when you're talking about relationships or, I like to write about fathers and sons. I think that there is a lot of commonality, no matter who you are. And by sharing it, it brings out the humanity in everybody. I mean, one of my favorite movies was Crazy Rich Asians, and I have no members of my family who share that. But man, my family's West Indian, and there were scenes, shot for shot that happened in our family. So, it brings us together. It's like, okay, noodles and what is it? As they're folding the noodles, I'm like, meat patties in my community, and there is a religiosity to the best meat patties and why they need to be made in a certain way. So yeah, absolutely.
Well, I was going to say, I was just looking at the time. We've got just a few minutes for our next panel starts. I did want to ask Defiant, how can people find this book? And who's the publisher?
Yes, Defiant is. I'm doing it with Legion M. They're the company. So if you go to their website, you can find it. You can also find it at defiant.com and also on Instagram at Defiant Project. And it's always there. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I am Rob Edwards. Actually, on all platforms, I am Rob Edwards, and I usually talk it up. We did a Kickstarter campaign where we launched it and we said we had asked for $10,000 and we wound up with about $160,000. So it was very nice, because you come out and you say, gee, I hope people will like this idea and would want to buy a book like this. And boy, howdy, people came to us. I think we're going to, when we start pre-selling again on Legion, either Legion M or the Defiant website, we'd like to open it up again to pre-sales, to let people have an opportunity to go. The thing that is happening that I really like is that timing is always so perfect, but that people want to buy the books for schools. Yes. And so that is a good thing, because that's part of the idea of doing it as a graphic novel and not as a novel, not as a historical text or anything like that, was to kind of get kids where they're at, tell kids an inspirational story that they want to hear in a way that they want to hear it, as opposed to like being dusty or being like a, whatever, some channel, whatever, where it's just like, oh, hey, I remember the thing. Yes. And by me telling it, I'm trying to tell the story in a different way. I'm trying for it to be as entertaining as possible. He was charismatic, so I assume he was funny. Many of the stories that are told in it are within that period of history were super ironic and have not been told. I'm a geek, so I've researched just absolutely everything, every aspect of not only this guy's life, but what was going on contextually around it. We packed a room at Comic-Con, and they were also very enthusiastic about it. I'll talk it up a little bit. Nicholas Draper Ivey, who does Static Shock and a bunch of really amazing stuff. He's a fantastic artist. He's been doing the covers, and Ray Anthony Height, who does Black Panther, is doing the interiors. He's amazing. He's got this great anime style that works really well with us. Christopher Robinson, who edits Black Panther comic books, is editing the graphic novel. It has expanded into 3 volumes because this guy's life is so big. But it's truly an incredible story, and I think we are telling it in a way that that honors it as a story. Once again, for the aspiring writers, I don't think I could have written this movie or this book, this story 20 years ago. I really think I needed to kind of go through the boot camp of Disney Pixar and the pressures of writing the first Black Princess and stuff like that before I hit this thing, because I know how seriously people take these kinds of stories, and I know how important it is to do all of the research and really get it right, and then, like I say, make it as entertaining as humanly possible.
Thank you so much, Rob, for being here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It was great. What a pleasure.
Once again, this is Otherworldly Fundraising. Our fundraising efforts are benefiting one simple wish. Links are located in the description below.